The thing about offsets is that they're far simpler than you think, um, but most people think about them wrong. So I'm going to see if I can give you the one tiny piece of information that will make it actually make some sense. Um, and I just have to figure out the words to use to make it clear. So the actual truth is that the offset has nothing to do with the outside corner. All right. What I mean by that is normally when I'm trying to find a particular reactor for something, the one that matters to me is kind of the outside of the voxel shape that I'm making, right? But but when we're doing offsets, it's not the black one that matters to me. It's one of these gray ones, depending on the angle that I'm looking at. Which is why you always want to do offsets from the point or from a line. In other words, from the smallest voxel you can, right? And the reason is that, and so now I'm going to do it wrong, right? I'm going to try to do an offset from a block, right? So if I have a block and I want to offset a block and I'm offsetting to another block, well, if I place it here next to it, it grows to meet that block, but it's growing to meet that block at the edge it already has, right? So I click it here and hey, it grows to meet the block that it's next to, but it it's literally growing to meet the space it's already in, right? If I have a small uh, block of some sort. Do I really not have just a straight up? One moment, please. Jetpacks. Wrong key. All right. How am I not built? Oh, yay! There we go. Right key. Uh, Never voxelmance in the wrong key. I recommend B flat. Sorry, geek joke. Uh, I'm old enough now. I'm allowed to have dad jokes. Just so you know, um, I'm in fact a dad, and old enough now that dad jokes are par for the course for me. So in any case, if I have this block, right, and I'm doing an offset of this block, right, and I set this block down next to it right here. Let's use the arrow keys so that we can. So I'm setting this block down right here, and this white block is going to offset to meet the green block, right? And it's going to meet the green block at these four vertices, right here, right here, right here, and right here. So if I place this there, great, it just offset to meet this block right here, all right? And so, but if you think about it from a reactor point of view, imagine that instead of this little tiny block, I had a point, right? Which of the corners of my reactor did the offset go to, right? It's these inside corners that it's going to meet, all right? So if I want the biggest offset I can get along the flat middle, then I'm going to offset this reactor right here, all right? And the reason I'm going to offset this reactor right here is this is the furthest, and the reason my wedge ends right here is because this is the furthest I can move this corner, all right? Right here is the furthest I can move this corner, and the furthest I can move this corner, and the furthest I can move this corner, and the furthest I can move this corner. I can push them to here because that is a voxel and a half away from their original location, which is actually the other side of this yellow. So the original location of this corner is really here, right? And I'm going, a full voxel and a half to get to here, okay? So this is the furthest I can move these inside corners, which is why this is where the wedge ends. But this corner right here, these corners, can actually go, another whole voxel out. But the only way they can do that is if they're growing out to meet one of these inside corners. And so the problem that you're having when you're trying to offset is you're like you're looking at a block that you've already got and going, well, I want to push it out here, but how do I get it to push out here because the one that I'm working with is already here? Well, so what you're doing is you're going to go find the wedge that is one voxel in from where you want to go to, and use that to get your offset. So for instance, if I have a let's say on the 16 wedge here, right? So again, this is 0, and this is 0, 16, 16, right? If I want to get to, I don't know, let's say 18, right? I want one voxel less than my offset to go to. And that means one voxel less is actually because remember, we're talking, I mean, I'm going from the middle to the half outside the edge here. But let's so this is 16. I want to go to 18. So I go and get the 2, 2, right? So this is 1, 1. This is 2, 2. So this is the 2, 2. And if I offset the 2, 2, so you know that tool I have that lets me do some stuff? If I'm doing offsets, you can actually do that with just placing a couple of blocks in the air right here. And so I'm going to do this way to achieve the same result. So I'm going to just copy my center like this, hit copy. All right. And then I'm going to go up 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to go over 1 and place it, and come back and place it again. So now I have a line that grew out to meet my offset. All right. And then I'm going to copy that out, undo twice, and place, and so now I would place this again, but I'm going to place it this way. So I'm going to place here and then back. All right. So now we actually have a flat that's offset from my center. Again, I'm going to copy the thing that I actually want and undo twice, and then paste it back in again. Not quite sure what happened there. Let's do that over. Go out 1, back in. I copied the wrong one. Doy. Undo twice. Paste that back in again. So now if I drop a reactor around this, actually, I think I have the colored one. Let's do the colored one. Purdy colors. 1, 2. All right. So here is my reactor. And if we come over here and we look at where we are with this one, you see that we've actually taken these outer corners and gone out 2 reactors, 2/16 or 1/8, right, further than this edge on this outside edge, because we offset the 2, 2 to get an 18, 18 instead of the 16. All right, was that clear? Hopefully that explains a little bit about offsets and how they work and why. And there's a little bit of a delay here, so I'm just going to pause and have a sip of my drink while I wait and see. There's the reaction I'm looking for. Ah, the light dawns. Yes. Good. I'm glad that was exactly the right reaction. So of course you could do that, and to get the biggest one, you do that exact same offset, not with the 2, 2, but with the 16, 16, right? So if I take the 16, 16 and offset it, I'm going to get the full, offset out to the furthest reaches. This is offset out to the half, but I can offset a full voxel out from that by offsetting this corner, doing exactly what I did there, and it puts it way the hell out here. So it would be a pixel off if this wasn't a null point wedge. And that is why we build null point wedges. I mean, that is 100% correct. If the pixel, just like when I was showing the cube, the little cube, and doing the offset into here, right? I mean, imagine that this is sort of a blown up version of a non-null point, right? You'd get that offset, the thickness of the cube would be your error. But because this is a null point wedge, these inner points are going to exactly the same point as the outer point, and therefore you don't get that error. And that is why I'm giving away these wedges. And the mechanisms that I discuss in Advanced Voxelmancy 100 series, and where I talk about how I created the null point and why I created the null point, that right there is the entire reason why it matters. Which is an important thing to remember, that that's also how you know when it doesn't matter, right? Because if the only point you care about is the outside, right? If all I care about is getting this blue point right here, right? Then I don't care if this inner corner has an error in it of a pixel, right? It just doesn't matter. It matters if I'm abutting this to something, but most of the time if I'm making a shape and I'm just pushing out, I'm looking for this outer corner right here, and it's because I'm making, I don't know, a circle or a ring, it's never abutting another thing that is exactly up against it. So one pixel is irrelevant, which is why I've said that, you know, if all you're doing is making a pillar and you kind of want it about this big, you know, and you're making like Roman Gothic pillars or something, you want a nice slope, and you know, you don't need all of the points, because you can just extrude a close point or shrink between a couple of points, take imperfect reactors that actually have the pixel, right? But you're extruding that out, and then you've got the size that you want. It doesn't matter that it's imperfect. So you know, it's only when you're doing specific things, and the time it matters the most is when you're doing an offset at the prime, which is why, you know, if you've got the 1/8 wedge or the 1/16 wedge and you're working with the perfect corner, the benefit here, of course, to this corner is that it is a null point and it's right there in the corner. So if I offset this, then when I place it up against another prime voxel, there's no gap here, right? And this is the point where it matters the most. It also matters like on 45-degree slopes in the middle. And unfortunately, that's where we have a failing. We can't actually get to the middle of a voxel. We have a pixel in the center of a voxel. That's the way their engine works. And you can't split that pixel in half, right? So the dead center of a voxel in Dual Universe is unattainable. The best you can get is, you know, a half a pixel away from center in any given direction. And therefore, any 45-degree slope where you're relying on the center is going to ripple a little bit, which is why I take the corners for like my tetras and stuff like that. I don't put the extra 2 reactors in the center. I pick a corner and move them up or down, and now it's calculating a mathematical slope and there's no ripple. Hopefully that makes some sense. And I think it makes sense right now in this context because of you know, talking about the offsets. All right. So I am sorry about the pause there. I was taking a second to actually put a marker. I probably will do a highlight where I go over the those offsets, and I'll post that to YouTube, because I think that's a useful lesson that more people want. And I think the bit about the pixels is in fact easier to understand in context of what we just covered. So, and hopefully you all agree. All right, so let's see, what to work on next? Should I clean up my mess? Or should I just leave it scattered around? Actually, this is actually a really useful workspace, even if it's a little redundant. I'm going to copy this and come over here. And let's actually rotate this 1, 2, 3 there. And 1, 2, 3, 4. Throw that in the air right there so I can have it for later. And then let's clean up my mess. That. Oh, oof. And this is the same idea. I did this for these stairs right here to get this corner right here. I did the same thing with the offsets right here. So I grabbed the reactor and then pulled these vertices out to this area right here, so that I could get this piece. That's just 1 voxel wide, but reaches out, and that way I can place it up against stuff. And this is again why the null point matters, right? Because when I set this down right here, what? What's that, Sonny? What? Sorry, I'm possessed by demons. Don't let it bother you. That. All right. So now when I paste this right here, right, I've got the offset. If I wasn't working with a null point corner, there would be a 1 pixel gap. Come on, move small, damn you. The problem with buffing yourself so that you can move quickly is that you always move quickly. I wish that there was a way to like really slow down to like trivial slow motion. And maybe there is, and I just don't know it. I don't think there's a control key for move slowly. So anyway, you'll see that there's no gap there. And that's because the null point means that when I pull that corner out, I'm going right to the edge of the prime voxel, which abuts to this prime voxel, and now there's no gap when I do that offset, even though this entire space right here is really empty and I'm using this voxel to project out to this one. But the nice thing here is, of course, it doesn't distort on the bottom. It doesn't try to come out and meet it, right? Yeah, so the wedge that is provided by the default tools is, in my mind, a terrible one, because it has that flaw to it. And I don't mean terrible like really terrible, you know, I'm sorry, Novacore, you know, it's like, I'm not insulting your programmers, man. Well, I am, but they deserve it. Love you. This piece right there is bogus, man. It's bogus. And it's bogus because get me back to my it's bogus because they put the corners, those other 2 corners right here. So the red and the orange corners there are in the center of the slope, ostensibly, but it ain't the center. And the stupid thing is that you can actually see that, or I can see that. I don't know if anybody else can. I'm going to raise that up a little bit so I get a better floating angle on it. And I'm going to come in right there. And you tell me you can't see that right there. See that bump? It's not just me, right? I'm going to come in here. Let's turn light, maybe. There. You tell me you can't see that, right? it starts here and it ripples out a little bit to get to that point and comes back in again. And that's because this point is not legit, right? It's there's a I mean, it's just plain wrong, because there's a pixel in the middle. There is no dead center in the voxel. We can't get there. So I'm going to prove it, because it matters. So if you think about this corner right here, it's not a 0, 0, 0, right? It's a 0, 0, 8, right? So we're going to go to 8, 0, 0. La da 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 da, which is this one right here. And we're going to pay attention to our rotations. So I've got the black one here for a reason, right? Things are not always equal. So this matters. This is my 800, but we've got my black one, in the upper corner right here. We're going to go ahead and we're going to overlap these. All right. Now with the black one here, you see we're kind of right where that other one sort of is, but now I'm going to rotate it. So I'm going to rotate it out to here. We're going to look to see where it is. And you're going to see that it's not pointing anymore where the other one is. Remember I told you that it pulled out? Well, look, it's indented now by a tiny bit. Do you see that? Right? And the same thing if I rotate it down to this bottom corner. Now it's rotated on both axes, and you can see it very, very clearly. So this is where that ripple is I'm talking about, right? We're coming up. It's pulling out from here, but it's to the inside. If I did it this way, it would be an inside ripple, right? And so that's me proving the point, right? And we can't not do that. To my knowledge, there is zero way to get to the center of that piece discrepancy point right there. I have tried every which way from Tuesday to do this, and it ain't possible. There is they lock into those increments. Which makes sense, right? I mean, we're talking math here. It's taking an entire voxel and it's splitting it up into what is basically an 8-bit space of its total movement range, which is a voxel and a half, which gives us 84 pieces across the voxel, and that means that there's actually a pixel in the middle. And it's fine. It's just a thing you've got to know. It's only relevant in very specific scenarios, and you just avoid those scenarios by not working with that point, which is why for my slopes I don't put these reactors right here. I put them, I move these corners to where blue and green are, or where pink and light orange are instead, because then it's just mathematically drawing a line and it's ignoring that point in the middle entirely. It doesn't care anymore. It's vector graphics by the time we deal with the mesh and those kind of renderings. So instead of points. So yeah, that's why.